My name is Linda Wayne. I'm the project manager for NSGIC. You all probably know Susan Butow, who is the USGS Hydrography Data Acquisition Lead, Steve Achel, who is the Hydrography Management and Planning Lead, and just on screen comes Dennis Peterson. He is your NSGIC liaison to the federal 3D and TM working group for the 3D HP component. The meeting is being recorded, and all of this information will be in the NSGIC knowledge base. The slides, the recording, and the resources will be in the NSGIC knowledge base under 3DHP FTN. So if you want to follow up on something, please go there. USGS, Steve, will you or Sue be talking to us today?
Sue's going to start.
Okay, I will start. So just a quick data acquisition update. We are kind of working on our finalizing the FY26 data acquisition, about 90,000 square miles to date. I will apologize to Josh Greenberg. We are missing a project in Washington State, cooperative agreement. Our map maker is out with a sick family member, so he wasn't able to get me a new map. So we'll get that updated as soon as possible. But just visualize a big orange blob in southern Washington, courtesy of Josh Greenberg. So we have 16 3DHP DCA projects. You can see these on the map picked out in the orange color, and one project that's being fully funded by the state, contracted through our GPSC contracting mechanism. And then another federal partnership in Oregon, courtesy of the Forest Service that we're partnering with them on. We are working on the FY27 DCA. We'll hope to have more information out to you guys as soon as we know what our timelines are for it. I think that's all I've got. If Steve wants to hop in with his updates.
Sure. So on the product side, we're getting the Q3 service update ready. There'll be 5 new work units coming out in that release in Alaska, Ohio, 2 work units in Massachusetts, and 1 in Tennessee. We're also going to have the flow network derivatives integrated into the service attribute table. You may recall the last quarter, those were a separate table you had to download and join. And then also anticipating releasing the HydroAd 3D for Points API and web interface. Those are in testing right now with actually quite a few people from the Forest Service and a few state folks. And so far, so good, I guess is the story there. So that's what you can look forward to in about a month. This will trickle out onto the web, but will be formally announced on July 28th at the Hydro Community Hall.
Steve, excuse me. We're getting some voices, so if you're not on mute, please mute yourself. Thank you. Go ahead, sorry.
No, that was it. Just that a month from today, or next month at this time slot on the 28th, we'll have a Hydro Community Call and sort of formally release all this stuff.
Any questions for Steve or Sue? Comments? Encouragements?
Take whatever we can get.
All right. Well, thank you both. Appreciate that. Just as a reminder, because we are new back to the project, I'll go through these quickly. This is a cooperative agreement between NSGIC and USGS, and its purpose is really to engage stakeholders in the derivation of 3DHP data. We want to have, by doing that, we enhance the consistency of the data and conformance to standards, and thereby make the data products more usable. Some of the specific objectives is we're going to do some knowledge via outreach and dialogue. We want to support state planning. We have guidance documents, and of course, we'll have discussion topics and can provide direct assistance as well. And a lot of what we do is talk about strategies, best practices, shared resources that help everybody in supporting the management, quality, and application of their data. real quickly, our primary activities with our work plan we've developed is communications and outreach. Um, we have stakeholder engagement. You're part of this right here. And we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail in just a second, but we're having the, I think we've talked last time, well, I'll talk about it now. Fourth Tuesday of each month, something is happening. So it'll either be a 3DHP FTN interest group in the months listed here, or a NSGIC for the state hydrography community calls. We do have one scheduled in August, and that's going to be a follow-up to their ESRI meeting. And then also, as Steve mentions, the USGS hydrography community call is in April, July, and October. And we feel fortunate that we were able to coordinate with both of these communities so that you can just mark that fourth Tuesday of the month. Now, knowing where to go and what to do is up to you. So, mark your calendars. We'll provide a little bit. I personally just set up 3 different repeating calendar events. So I don't know if that helps others. All right, I am going to go ahead and put this in the chat. So you've got the meeting schedule and you've got the link. I see that Josh is on. Josh, did you want to any updates as far as your Esri meeting, your meetup that's coming up?
Just to say, if you are involved with hydrography mapping in your state and you're going to be at the Esri UC, please join us Tuesday, the 14th, 11:30 to 12:30. We will have lunch provided thanks to our sponsors. And I can, oh, you put the details. Awesome. You put the details in the chat. Perfect. So that's about it. If you have questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me. And this will be I think this is our third or fourth, that Jane Schaefer Kramer, the Hydro Steward of California, and I put together. It's a casual sharing of progress and getting to know people and making contacts with other states that are also working on hydrography mapping. So hope to see you there. Thank you.
Steve says in the chat it's a fun group. You know, it's not metadata, but hydrography group's pretty good.
We're a fun group. Yes.
You are a fun group. Other things that we plan on doing is supporting planning and implementation. As I mentioned, we have a planning guide. We want to promote the use of data and applications and also provide feedback to the federal program and data development feedback. And that's been a good conversation that we've had over the years with USGS on these projects. Any questions about why we're here, what we're doing, what the objectives are? Please feel free. All right. Well, the main reason I've brought you here today is to talk about coordinating 3DHP education resources. I'm going to throw out real quickly, this is something that was suggested. We did an inventory of topics at the beginning of the year. If you weren't able to see it, this was suggested in particular by the folks at Tennessee. And I don't know if Suzanne, I'm sorry. Yep, Suzanne's on. No, wrong Suzanne. Anyhow, Dennis, I see that you're on, and if Suzanne is on, would you like to kind of tell people why leveraging this materials was important to you as a state and what you're kind of hoping we can achieve through the interest group?
Sure. Yeah, at a high level, it's about realizing that we've made we being the feds, USGS and state partners have and going to be making a significant investment into 3DHP data products, and it would be a travesty for us not to educate our user base and potential users on the value of these data products. And so in our state, in Tennessee, I've tasked Suzanne White, who's my technical lead for hydrography. She's going to be my point person on developing some curriculum and outreach to state users as well as our broader GIS community on the value of these data sets and how they can be integrated into a variety of use cases. We're just at the beginning stages of development, so there's still a lot of unknown we don't have a lot of the details worked out just yet, in other words. But very excited to be part of working with Linda and this group on helping move forward and providing some insights into some educational resources that we can share in the community. Suzanne, do you want to add anything to that?
I think you got everything, Dennis. One thing I would like to add to that, though, we are using a group of folks that will be an advisory board, and they're subject matter experts in their fields that are using water resources, GIS data already. So they're going to be the ones that will be most likely the users of this data, and will have the use cases and whatnot. So I'm hoping to lean on them for their expertise to develop out training modules.
Great. Linda, back to you.
Thanks. Very good to hear this activity going on. And I know one of the issues you did is you're happy to move forward this, but there's no sense you doing it and Montana doing it and New Mexico doing it. So it would be, if I'm understanding, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but the idea that we could share this activity with others and get their input. And then Sue and Steve also supported this as a project activity. So I'm going to throw it to USGS and see how the interest group effort can best support the federal 3DH program at some level. What would you like to see the effort achieve as part of the project?
Well, I think the trick is it's just like with the data. It's build once, use many, right? But in this case, it's the tools. So there are, we're collectively building a standardized national framework for hydrography data. But as you mentioned, there's no reason for Tennessee to develop a tool to do Clean Water Act reporting, and then have Montana write their own tool to do it, and then have New Mexico write some other tool to do it, or any of the other things that people want to do with hydrography data. The other thing I think that's kind of remarkable here, or worth noting at least, maybe there's the same thing, is that we have historically had the NHD kind of moving in its column, and the WBD in its column, and the NHD plus, both medium and high res, moving in its column there. And these things never really, each had kind of distinct user groups and distinct bases, distinct applications. One of the things that's happening in 3DHP is we're really bringing those functionalities, bring that core data together. How do we bring those different user communities together such that they can share expertise and leverage what happened in the NHD world to be able to apply it to 3DHP, or what happened in the NHD plus world to be able to apply it to 3DHP. If you build a data set and no one uses it, does it make a sound or something like that? Right. And so we want, part of, there's more to this than just putting blue lines on a map. That's necessary and useful, but not sufficient. We want to have a library, an inventory, a community where tools and techniques and expertise can be shared, so that Tennessee and Montana and New Mexico don't have to relearn it each time for themselves.
So
I think that's all I got right at the moment.
Yeah, I think I'll just echo both Dennis and Steve. Actually, Dennis and the idea that having these types of education resources available, to this whole community helps to drive the value proposition for these data, because it's not always, as obvious to folks who are outside of the hydrography community what these blue lines on a map mean with respect to more than blue lines on a map, that there's functionality behind them that's really critical to a lot of applications. And we can start to highlight those applications and show people how to use the data and how the data are used. I think it goes a long way to sort of enhancing or enforcing the value proposition of the data. And then, Steve said it, having resources, and you said it too, I think, Linda, having resources that the whole community have available to them. So we're not repeating things as noted, Tennessee shouldn't do something and then Montana come around and do almost exactly the same thing and repeat the effort. If we pool our resources, we know that we can do great things and get a lot farther than if we do things individually. So I think this is a great use of this cooperative agreement. I appreciate you guys taking this on.
Well, I want to point out that both Zoltan, I believe is it Dave Favreau, have contributed thoughts. Zolt, do you want to elaborate on what you were talking about, building on the idea of a position paper?
Hello?
You can say, yeah, you're there.
Great. I had to unmute. I don't know if I have much more to elaborate on that other than I thought it was a good question last meeting. And regardless of whether, the state is interested in adopting a new surface waters map with or without regulatory conditions, there's a variety of ways to, acknowledge a new map. I thought, good deliberation on that by some of the policy leaders in NSGIC might be good. And something good might come out of it, so like some advice to all states on options.
I think that is an excellent idea. We'll talk a little bit more about the steps we're going to take, but I am definitely keeping a list of topics.
Yeah, I didn't know if it fit into this discussion or later in the agenda, but I made a note to make sure I spoke up at some point today, Linda. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you. And thank you. I asked for input. Thank you. And I'm sorry, is it Dave? Do you want to speak up, Dave, and tell us what you're thinking? Perhaps not. Or maybe there's a... So I've captured both of the notes. And again, those are Danielle. Very good. Thank you. That helps. Danielle, I've captured your notes. If you want to contribute, please feel free to come off a mic. If you're good with your notes, that's okay too. Okay, thank you. Well, I've captured this topic. So I want to, oh, Tom, your hand's up, please.
Yeah, first off, I just for clarity, I was a college professor for 25 years before I took this job as deputy director at Mass GIS. And the one thing I would say is, as we start to build these educational curriculum, please don't forget that introductory level. Just using, I think, and Sue and Steve, you guys used to do a great job at USGS with the NHD education. It was like a newsletter, I think, came out like every other month or something. And I know you're probably not staffed to do something like, continue something like that. But I think sometimes we get this data and we go at such a high level that you're missing that next generation of GIS professionals who then, when get into the workforce, they've heard of it. They've put the blue lines on it because they need to buffer something, but that's really all they're doing. And I'm thinking more of like in a basic GIS course, really, the students are learning how to buffer, how to do all these things. Why not use 3D HP and that will allow them then to learn the power of this, as I like to say, and again, I'll age myself, sort of that Arthur Fonzarelli coolness of this data, right? But it will also but I think it will also then get it out to the rest of our community. I can tell you that when I was a professor, we were talking about aerial photography, had students go into it, and all of a sudden I was getting feedback from students that their parents were like, I didn't know this data set was out there. This is great. We need to push that Pennsylvania does this regularly because this data set is all, it's sort of bringing out the community being sort of that cheerleader. But again, I will also quote by saying, I have a 17-year-old who tells me I'm wrong all the time, so I could be wrong on this, but that's my 2 cents.
Nice. I'm going to drop back to Suzanne real fast and with Tennessee and Suzanne White and see, Suzanne, had you been thinking along and when you're talking about use cases and the subject matter experts you've compiled, were you thinking initially that your program would be at an introductory level, like what is this data and how can it be used?
Yes, absolutely. Even things such as I don't know if you'd call it simplistic, but I kind of do cartography, how best to display this data and what, different ways to display this data that maybe we can display with this that we couldn't with just the 2D data, so some very basic things and very short tutorials. And I'd like to have tutorials in place that could be as like a train the trainer, and maybe if there are graduate students or something like that that are interested in teaching off of the materials that we've pulled together, that might be a way to involve them too.
That's great. There's a question in the chat from Josh. Are you intending to focus on Tennessee? Are they going to be nationwide? Is it going to be a national topic with lots of Tennessee examples? What are you thinking? I know you're early in the stages.
Yeah. Well, the team that I've been pulling together as far as an advisory group are all from Tennessee, just because that's where I have access to and know people and know what they're doing. So I didn't necessarily intend for it to be topics limited to Tennessee. But since we've got about 3/4 of the state already tasked to get 3DHP done, that is my focus, but I'm not intending the training to be limited to topics for Tennessee.
So that is why this dialogue is really helpful, because as Tennessee goes through their process, if we give them feedback and information such as, can it be done for general information with Tennessee examples? Then when, Josh, you in Washington want to pick them up and use them, you can plug in your Washington examples or, Virginia or whatever. So again, I think that's part of why this, exactly, Tom, why this dialogue and the sharing of activities is important. Great. Any other comments or questions about why or when? I was going to go through what we kind of the perceived task and get your feedback on that. All right, I think with regards to the task, and again, I want to keep this reasonable. Sometimes we get really big ideas and then we get stuck in those really big ideas. I think culverts kind of taught me a lesson. So I think culverts have taught everybody a lesson. But what can we reasonably achieve? What is something that this group, as a whole, with many arms and legs, what can we achieve? And, the first thing that came to mind was just establish a registry of existing materials or activities, like who's working on what, with some kind of a description. At the same time, identify needed topics. I think we had a couple of those suggested here earlier. We need to make sure we touch on this. We need to make maybe a position paper, something like that on policy and authoritative data. So I think those are the first thing is what's already out there and what do we want to talk about, or what do we want these training materials to address? And then I think solicit participants to develop on the needed topics. And not sure how that works other than discussion. We'll get down into details later, but the thought was in general, like, hey, is anybody working on this or anybody have interest in working on this? We as the interest group and we as the 3DHP FTN program can support the development of these new materials. We can enlist contributors, we can facilitate discussions. And if somebody wants materials review and feedback, again, I think Tennessee is doing what Tennessee wants to do for Tennessee, but if there's some point where you guys would like feedback on your materials from the group, we could facilitate that as well. And of course, we would definitely compile and publish descriptions of those available resources. But are there other things, other tasks? And I'll talk about topics and approaches. Okay, thanks, Dennis. But this is specifically what are the actual things that we as a group can achieve? Other thoughts on what you'd like to get done here? All right, well, we'll consider that a starting point. We can always, Josh, yes.
You had started a list of questions and concerns, like an online Excel list that
Correct.
we all had.
Yeah.
I think aggregating our statewide concerns and then passing those to Steve and Sue and getting feedback, that seems super important to me.
Okay, so building on that, what do you guys want to talk about? And I think that those two things dovetail nicely. We've got a list of topics that people wanted to talk about. We may not be able to address all of it, but I think that's a great starting point. I will probably move those. What I'll do is, well, I'll talk to you in a minute, but I think great point. We're going to build upon and incorporate those topics. So we drafted a registry. It's out there if you want to look at it, but I thought this was the easier way to see it. And the registry basically is just a, good old spreadsheet. Give us a title and a topic. Give us a brief description of it. And then tell us what format it is. Is it just an informational, educational website? Is it an actual online lesson, a more formal like training material, tutorial? Are you developing instructor-led materials that other folks could utilize? Is it a handout or a document, such as that position paper? And what's a little odd here is I went ahead and incorporated also the format may be a topic of interest. There are no materials developed, yes, but here's a topic that I want to talk about. And then we also have an option to come with other. So again, just trying to get a sense is that, what is the format of the existing material or what is the topic? Is it available to the public with upon request registration, internal use only? Is there a website? And if available, what organization is doing this and who are the point of contacts, and then comments. I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. I do want to say this is not just states. I think this is federal agencies. This is private sector folks. So this is not anything we want to limit to just states. But are there additional information or actions you think that we should be capturing at this time? Is this a good first start? And then we can certainly go back and add information as needed. If you were going to inventory, what are the education materials out there? Is there other stuff that would be on your list?
I would say, this is Tom again. Sorry to be a pain. I would say there would be something in there about either like software needed. Is this particular resource you're going to have to use GIS software, Pro, QGIS? Is it
Excellent.
strictly off the web? Because I think that will be important. Again, I hate to do this, put my educator's cap on. That's going to help with educators trying to figure out how maybe they can utilize some of these resources, probably others, but I'm just thinking as far as educators.
I think that's a great idea. What are the software requirements? Or even software association. I mean, is it specific to a certain application? Great. And I think Josh is getting that too, the platform codes. I see that as well. All right. So we can certainly amend that. Wait up before I go. So I guess the next step is just to start this registry. I hate to use the word inventory, but I'm going to an inventory. What I will do is I will update it with the software requirements and associations. And then I will send it out to the 3DHP FTN interest group, and hopefully we can start collecting information from you all. And again, these are things that you're working on, things that you want to work on. I should probably put in progress under availability too, or in development or something like that, development status. And if nothing else, at first, just being able to look at that and say, oh, I see that they're working on this. I should give, Tom a call and see what they're working on and see what they're thinking as far as they go. Yes, Josh.
Not to open a can of worms, but how do you feel about private companies listing resources in here? And I'm only saying that because I've been working with Esri and ArcHydro as a solution. That is a paid software, and I appreciate that's I view it as a private-public partnership, but I could also see vendors coming in and saying, "Hey, we can do stuff for you," and calling that a resource. So I just was, it's maybe shades of gray, but it's something to consider.
Oh, absolutely. I hope I said that a few minutes ago. My perspective is if somebody has, I don't care. Yeah, I think there's a lot of insight. Obviously, our private sector partners have a lot of technical insight. They also have a lot of insight as far as how clients are using these tools. So I, for one, let's hear if there's any naysayers. Anybody have concerns about including, uh, you know, uh, private sector oriented or developed materials? Sounds like we have consensus. Just, if you've got something, put it out there. All right, well, you're going to continue to hear about this. As I said, we'll send out a message with the registry and we'll start that dialogue going. I'm also going to prompt as we get things in there. I think it would be good to prompt folks to kind of give us updates on where they are in their resources. And hopefully it's just not poor Tennessee saying, hey, what are you guys doing? Is it ready yet for the rest of us to use? And just pinging with others and doing some outreach. So that'll be my next task as we move forward. And before we move to the state updates, I just wanted to, any other questions, comments, ideas? Well, thank you all. That was really good input. I appreciate it. So let's get to our state update. Steve, I see that you're on the call. You want to tell us what's going on in Indiana?
Absolutely. Sorry for the delay. I'm usually not on Zoom, so yeah. So we are kind of exploring what 3DHP is going to look like in Indiana, and I appreciate you putting the bullets here on the slide because I don't have to go find them. No, I have them pulled up too. So we're currently our big activity is that we're currently collecting QL1 8-point per square meter LiDAR in 3 stages. We just finished off the first tier, which is the center part of the state. We'll collect the eastern part of the state next year. And the following year, we will collect the large western part of the state. And so we're kind of approaching this as this is our opportunity to organize with our stakeholders and try to figure out how to pay for a future 3DHP statewide project, either in chunks, which is probably what we're going to end up doing, or in a bigger project. I think we're likely to, in our next funding biennium, do a priority project or 2 in some hydrologic units, and then move on to complete the rest of it in the following biennium because of the way that state funding works. Right. We're also, in addition to kind of doing the strategy part of things, we're also kind of talking about best practices with other states and also with vendors. And some things that we've learned that are probably not a surprise to states who are far ahead of us in this process is that, you can reduce costs by having some of this water flow data in advance, like culverts, right? And also figuring out what you want to do with urban stormwater runoff in terms of your 3DHP data. And, we've been talking with vendors, but also our neighboring states, because Ohio and Kentucky have both found interesting things on the funding side of things, like county engineers are often really interested in 3DHP in our neck of the woods. And so we might start reaching out to talk to some of them. We are considering moving to a smaller catchment size above the USGS base spec because that matches our local resolution NHD data, and our Department of Natural Resources, especially in the Division of Water there, they really find that data quite useful in understanding flooding and also in flood mitigation kind of work. And then we are exploring what this local resolution HD data might mean for a larger project in the state. We might have to discard it. We might be able to use some aspects of it. But basically, we're in the organization stage. So hopefully that wasn't too long. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. That's about it.
Linda, are you still on if you are, you're on mute.
I am talking away. Does anybody have any comments or questions or suggestions for Steve? Please just feel free to chime in. Thank you, Sue. Anybody? All right. Well, thank you for keeping us updated on, and definitely questions that I think other folks are looking at as well. Steve, did you want to ask something?
Well, it seemed like there was some dead air, so I thought I'd throw one at it. One thing that we might think about when you're comparing to your previous 6-acre catchment threshold, that was every 6 acres gets some kind of flow path.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really trying to be focused on channels. But there isn't necessarily, it'd be interesting to see maybe in a couple pilot areas how those two thresholds compare, right? Like it's possible, it's at least, certainly regionally, I think it's possible you get places where what we're producing is actually more detailed than what you had before, and it may be less detailed in some other parts of the state. Right.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it'd be really regional, like you say, Steve. Southern Indiana might have more detail actually, and then you get to northern Indiana, which is super flat, and there's not a lot of channelization outside of what you'd expect to see, and it might be very different. It might be more less detailed. Yeah. It's interesting. Not to belabor the point too much, but we did have a county, Hamilton County, Indiana, which is where Carmel is, just north of Indianapolis, did a 3DHP project on their own with Dewberry as their vendor. And there's some really interesting insights that came out of that have helped inform some of our decision making and really probably inform more of our discussions because we're still in the decision making process on 3DHP strategy, right? But yeah, good point. Thank you.
All right. Any more questions for Steve? Ariane, are you on the call?
Yes, I am.
Excellent.
Hello, I'm Ariane Davis with the Iowa DNR. For Iowa, we currently have two pilot projects for two watersheds that are going on kind of in the middle of the state, North Raccoon River, and an upper watershed of the Iowa River. Those have been collected and generated and are currently under review. So that is where we are at the moment.
Thank you. Anything you're looking forward to, or that have issues that have come up, or items you're dealing with?
I'm only tangentially involved in that. So not that I have been made aware of.
Okay, great. Thank you. And unfortunately, the Louisiana GIS Council has their monthly meeting the exact same time as our meeting. So Amy sent this information along, and she asked me to share it with you. First of all, the state has QL1 LiDAR statewide, and the council itself is trying to establish a hydrography community that will coordinate state 3D HP development. And they're obviously going to include state agencies. Right now, LOT, their transportation department, is their lead topographic mapping agency in the state. And they're engaging their parishes. And the good news is they think have one potential DCA application in development that's going to have some local funding. And of course, they're going to reach out to other stakeholders. But she just wanted to share they were taking this approach of they're getting the ball rolling with statewide coordination. So I'm sure if Amy was here, she'd love to get your recommendations on do's and don'ts. But if you have strong thoughts, please reach out to her and let her know. All right. Well, just wanted to touch base. This is our last slide. Some upcoming activities. As you know, there's the Esri Hydrography Stewards Meetup. We will not have a 3DHP call in July because we will have the USGS Hydrography Community Call. Again, if you want to get direct call-in information for that call, you need to go to the website I provided and join the community. And then August 14th, that'll be the last day for annual conference registration is open. And that's the last day for early registration. We hope to see you all in early November in Montana. August 25th, we will have a Hydrography Steward Community Call, and hopefully Jane and Josh can catch us up on all things they learned at the user conference. Again, you need to join that community to get the call-in information. And then we'll be back on the 22nd with the interest group meeting. Not that you won't be hearing from us before then. We're going to continue with the interest group outreach and a few other things. We're going to be doing some outreach to states that don't have a lot of activity right now. So we'll be doing, if you're on the call, you're probably not going to be getting that phone call. Contact information, we introduced the key folks on the project, but if you needed to contact anybody, we wanted to provide that information for you here. So with that said, any questions, comments, anything? I mean, we're open to other discussion topics. If anybody has anything they wanted to share, go ahead, Josh.
I'm like Steve. I'm filling space, but Phil had done some interesting work with a web map that was collecting kind of projects, and I was curious if there's intention of keeping that going.
Yes, and you might have seen Phil had a note up earlier saying that we need to update a few things, and I think that's one of the things.
Okay, so there are plans to keep that going.
Right. I've been talking with USGS. We may not have the exact same approach, but we definitely want to highlight activities and who's doing what, or a point of contact in neighboring states, those kinds of things. Yeah.
And so the other question I had, he had done something kind of cool where I'm messing up the terms, but he kind of created a chatbot kind of thing where he took a bunch of our information and put it in. And I was curious if that is also ongoing.
That is still at the website. I am going to let, I think USGS would like to maybe comment on that. They've had some concerns about that being hosted at the 3DHP site per se. So Sue, I'll let you address that.
Yeah, we probably will deprecate that, Josh, mostly because we do have some concerns about, AI pulling information. And I know it was trained on certain resources, but there are some concerns about using that method, and federal government use of AI and all the things. So
gotcha.
Yeah, for the moment, we'll probably pull that for now.
Awesome. Good to know. Thank you.
And Phil, I know you're on the call. You and I can talk, and maybe we can find a great home for that. Because as Josh is saying, it's something he's found useful. So,
useful and interesting.
Okay.
Phil was opening my eyes to the possibilities, but it does seem, I agree with Sue, unless it's maintained with accurate info, then it becomes less helpful than more helpful, right?
Right. This is Phil. It's dated now, but maybe about 7 or 8 months old data. So yeah, it needs a refresh. Ultimately, my hope was that Esri would be doing that baked into ArcGIS Pro, but
Hmm.
but
It's interesting
it
you say
hasn't
that
happened
because,
yet.
yeah, I'm working with the ArcHydro team to think about developing something similar specific to the Esri tools. But it would be very much ArcHydro, less, what you had some info about 3D HP in general and fundraising and things like that. The Esri, I don't think have that angle.
Yeah, and Phil, this is Tom Mueller. It really helped when I had to call these municipalities to get their stormwater data. Just sort of gives me some things that weren't upfront that you'd think about on why we would need your stormwater data connected to 3D HP. It was a nice little ace in my up my sleeve sometimes talking to some municipalities. So thank you so much for that.
All right, Phil, you and I are going to talk, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, thank you all. And thanks for bringing those items up, Josh. I appreciate it. And I need 10 more of you and Tom. So, oh yes,
You
and John wanted me to mention, I should put it in there. John, come on off mute. Come tell us about encourage people to come to the reception.
Yeah, we're having NSGIC is going to be sponsoring their third year reception at the Union Tap and Kitchen on Monday, July 13th, beginning at 5:30 till 7. So if any of you are going to be attending, I know Joshua will be, please come to our reception and you can mingle with your colleagues and talk to other people. So we're excited to have that. We're also having an exhibit booth. So please stop by our exhibit booth. The exhibit hall will be open Tuesday through Thursday of that week of the user conference. That's it. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, John. And continuing Tom and Josh contributing, Josh, do you want to address Tom's comment about your work with 3D HP linear referencing? I mean, we've got extra time, so.
You need extra time if you're going to let me talk, right? If I'm going to come off mute. Absolutely. Yeah. So we've made some pretty good progress with the ArcHydro tools. We have several new tools that are available in ArcHydro that I can't remember actually if they require a 3D analyst or spatial analyst license. I don't think they do, but I can't confirm. But we have at least 7 or 8 tools that will help you build a network from your elevation derived hydro or the 3D HP data. So we've been testing it on both, and it's a pretty slick little system. What we're missing is the walkthrough guide that makes it really easy. We have some material, but I want to make it even more simple. At the next release, which will be coming out during the UC, we have some snapping tools. And the snapping tools, I will admit, are not going to be perfect for everyone, but these, I think, are really going to get you 90% of the way to linking your existing event data to your elevation-derived hydro or 3D HP. And so we also have to work on the documentation for that. So if you're at the UC, I'll be talking about that at several different times, and we do need the feedback. But I know it's hard to get feedback until the tools come out, but I think in the next month for sure we will have the final release or not the final, but the next release of those tools.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your hard work.
Oh, my pleasure. And to be clear, those tools are meant to be shared. If you're not familiar with ArcHydro, it's a package that's free if you have Esri already as a product, and they are Python, so it's exposed. If you don't want to use them and you just want to use the Python, you can just grab the Python. So we're this worked as a good solution for us because I do not want to be involved in software management. And every time there's a .NET update, or an ArcInfo or ArcPro update or web update. I don't want to have anyone on my team. So that's kind of why this is a good public-private partnership. But happy to talk in more detail. Or I did share the first linear reference dynamic segmentation. This is a 60-page document that covers the first set of tools that we've released. I shared that in the interest of the communities, but if you can't find them, just let me know. The NSGIC community, right, Linda? Am I saying that correct?
Yes.
You are, but I had outreach from a couple of folks trying to find that document, and it's actually in the hydrography stewards community, which a lot of people don't have access to.
Oh, I can post it in the other one.
Yeah, can you move it to the library of the 3DHP? And for those of you that aren't familiar, when you log into the My NSGIC and go to the 3DHP interest group, there is a library there. And Josh and some others, they've posted some good resources. So yeah, we'll get Josh to move that document. Not move it, but post another version of it in the 3DHP group. That's great.
Yeah, and as soon as we get the snapping details, we'll post those as well. And that was kind of why I was asking about Phil's AI, because we're getting to the point where there's so many different tools and so many different resources. I don't know about all of you, but I even use the Google AI results when I'm looking for Esri solutions instead of going to Esri. So I could see in the future there's just so many different angles and avenues about this topic. It's sometimes hard to keep it straight, but I'll have that PDF available in that community.
Now, this is not the link that Greg's provided, right? In the chat?
Let me check. I don't think so because
just click on it and say, okay, but we'll have that. Thank you, Greg, for contributing.
Yeah, that's about ArcHydro, which is great. The PDF that I'm sharing has not yet been fully approved by Esri to get published, but I've been given the okay to share it publicly. So it's not yet available in the GIS for water resources, I don't believe, but it will be soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, since we have a few minutes, Rick says Rick Moore doesn't have from Minnesota, does not have a mic, but he was asking for those of you that have QL1 data, are you using half-meter cell resolution to create your data, or are you using 1-meter cell resolution? Their statewide seamless DEM is half-meter, and he was wondering what other states are doing that have QL1. So if anybody can talk to that. Sue, did you want to contribute?
Yeah, I'll hop in on that and say that the 3DHP, or the elevation derived hydrography specification, specifies a 1-meter DEM because it's a national product. We need to have a DEM that works everywhere, whether you have QL1 or QL2 data. And I think we find that the results from 1-meter resolution DEM are quite good, and we think we're mapping the majority of channels that you would see either regardless. I don't know, Steve, if you have any comments on that.
Sure, I have a comment. So we have to, well, I think the one of the things that's interesting about this is you actually get you sort of lose signal as you get more detail in the data set. There's more noise to filter in the half-meter than in the 1-meter. You think of just obstructions in the channel, tufts of grass that weren't removed, or a big rock or something. You get somewhat different results when you do that, and it's definitely a case where maybe not only is the juice not worth the squeeze, but it may actually be worse off than working with the 1-meter. There's some element of thought that maybe they would actually be better off work with a somewhat coarser resolution even than the 1-meter. But that is sort of the national standard for 3DEP, and so we want to work in that framework rather than reinventing a whole other national elevation model.
All right, well, there's some good discussion going on. Josh from Arkansas provided a link to his status viewer where they're using the half meter. But and then Alex in Massachusetts said they're also dealing with that noise issue. So good discussion. And again, discussions like this, please bring this up on the 3DHP interest group listserv. If you have questions like this, yeah, this is more than just meeting announcements. Put it out there and get the dialogue going. That's what that discussion list is for. So please, please, please have these kinds of conversations. All right. Well, I see that we are just about on the hour. I have changed the meeting time to 1.5 hours. My thought though is if we can get through the actual meeting within an hour and then have a little bit of flex time for those that are able to sit on and have discussion. I don't know. I don't know. You at Sue or Steve, do you want to respond? Phil has a question about the higher resolution DEM may fail.
Yeah, I was actually just typing a response, but yes, it not only may it fail, it actually probably will fail. So there you go.
And then Brian wants to know if you're going to publish any guidance on this. Other than a specification that says don't do it.
Yeah, no, I think the guidance is use the 1 meter. Right. I mean, that's the standard. That's the standard for the next many years for 3DHP. There will be just like in 3DEP, there's sort of an evolution as we transition into more of a maintenance phase. There may be a transition 10 years, 15 years down the line when we get through this. But right now, it's a 1 meter DEM.
Good discussion. You think so, Brian? I don't know. Keep pulling you back in, buddy. All right. Thank you all. Great meeting. Thanks for the input. Watch your mailboxes for information about the education materials. And also, well, for those of you that we'll have some outreach as well. So thank you all. And I hope that you have a great month. And I hope that you all, many of you are able to convene in San Diego next month.
Thanks, Linda.
Bye, guys.